All right, we're back here on the Next Panel podcast. Today we're taking a bit of a break from the Marvel stuff. We're talking Black Adam from DC with two very special guests. Chris, you're back as always. For the first time, I think we haven't spoke to you in a while. I'm very happy to have you back, dude. You're on the Twitter machine, of course, at BR_Doctor, Chris Mueller. What's going on, man?
Oh, not too much. Yeah, we're all just so busy these days and schedules don't always line up. But yeah, I'm always down for this.
Absolutely. We're obviously in about an hour from when we're speaking right now, we're talking to Phil about Black Panther. But someone asked me when I had Bill and Rick on for the She-Hulk thing. I recorded it weeks ago, but I only put it up about a week ago. And it was fun and all. Bill and Rick were awesome, and they were filling in for you guys for that one. But someone asked me, hey, where's Chris and Phil? And I was like, hey, they're coming back. Don't worry. We're going to talk Black Panther. So I'm glad I got you on for this one, and we're going to have Phil on for Black Panther. But before we get to that one, we got Colin on this week, Colin Tessier from the Twitter machine. Colin, you're all over the place. You're on Twitter, first of all, at CT_2110. You're on Fightful. You work for all these variety of websites, man. You're all over the place. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Oh, thanks for having me. Very happy to be here. Just for context or information, I work for WrestleZone, covering wrestling stuff there. I'm the senior editor there. I'm the writer for Fightful, and I also dip my toe in Marvel and DC stuff for coming soon. So yeah, all over the place indeed. But and like Chris was saying, we're all busy, but I'm happy to take the time today to talk about Black Adam, which was a very fun movie.
Yeah, man, I just told you this before we hit record here, but I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't know you were into the whole DC Marvel stuff. Obviously, I knew you were big in the wrestling realm, but I wasn't sure if you were into DC and Marvel and stuff like that. So when you reached out and said you were cool with talking Black Adam, I was like, yeah, let's fucking go. And I'm always happy to have fresh voices here on the show, because it's usually Chris, Phil, and I. We have a lot of recurring kind of cycle of guests and stuff like that, but always cool to have a debut, so happy to have you join us. But let's talk about Black Adam. This came out a couple of weeks ago from when we're speaking right now, a movie a long time in the making as far as how long Rock wanted to make this thing. He was very hands-on with it. A lot of people really kind of coming out of it, talking about the post-credit scene. But before we even get to that stuff, Chris, I'll start with you. Just overall takeaways from the movie, whether you liked it, lived up to the hype. Because I know you just said you saw it over this past weekend, which tells me that you weren't, like you said a minute ago before we hit record, you weren't originally intending on seeing this movie. Why was that?
Well, it's not that I wasn't intending on seeing it ever. It's just I had no priority to go see it in the theater. When it comes to the DC movies, because they're not all like, it's hard to explain. Like, there doesn't feel like there's an urgency with it, because there's not 3 or 4 of these things a year plus 5 TV shows. So when the opportunity arose, I was like, sure, I'll go see it. Like, I like The Rock. I don't ever think I'm going to say The Rock is an amazing actor, because The Rock always plays The Rock.
Yeah.
He wasn't smiling very much in this movie, which is usually something The Rock does a lot, because people like The Rock's smile. But, this was The Rock playing serious Rock, basically.
Yeah.
So, like, if you like what The Rock brings to the table, you'll like this movie. If you don't, you won't. I liked a lot of the other elements in the movie, quite frankly, more than I liked Black Adam himself, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, are you overly familiar with Black Adam from the comics and follow that stuff coming into this film, or were you just watching it as a movie without any prior knowledge of Black Adam himself?
No, I know who he is. He's basically started as a Shazam villain.
Yeah.
And over the years, he's sort of been turned into more of an anti-hero and occasionally a hero. But he is one of those very complex characters. And I do think this movie did a good job of showing that he's more than willing to kill somebody if he thinks that that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, the way... yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
They overhyped the level of brutality this movie would have, though. They were like, this is going to be the most violent DC movie to date. And it was all pretty bloodless action, just like we're used to.
Yeah, it was pretty standard stuff as far as the action goes. Not to say it wasn't good, but it wasn't overly brutal. I thought the opening scene when we first see him was great, where he just wipes out everyone, which was awesome. But that's what I was wondering about as well. You mentioned the Shazam aspect, obviously starting as a Shazam villain, as you mentioned. Obviously, we didn't get Shazam in this movie. Wasn't the rumor that he not was supposed to be in it, Zachary Levi as Shazam. Not that he was supposed to be in it, but they were supposed to do like a post-credit scene linking the two, or was that Rock wanted to wait a little bit longer? What was the idea there?
Yeah,
I heard something like that. Something.
There was a planned cameo or something, and then The Rock was like, no, let's keep them separate for now. And now it kind of sounds like The Rock is obsessed with a Superman Black Adam showdown more than a Shazam Black Adam showdown.
Yeah, that's what the post-credit scene indicated. So it looks like we're headed in that direction, whether it be for Black Adam 2 or whatever, getting back Henry Cavill for that. But before we go further with that, Colin, what were your thoughts about the movie and how Rock portrayed Black Adam in this thing? Because this had been built up for a long time. He was heavily hyping this thing. If you follow The Rock on Twitter, this was all you saw for months on end, and it finally came out. So what were your thoughts on it?
I mean, like you had said, The Rock's been working on this to some capacity, I think since like 2014 even, maybe 2015. Like it's been a long time. And I know the movie's been through a number of challenges and stuff like that, let alone the pandemic and everything. And like Chris had said, for me, ironically, I wasn't like chomping at the bit to see it day one, and as I often am with like Marvel movies and stuff like that, for the most part. I actually, especially once they gave away the big post-credits thing, literally in the promotional interviews and whatnot, that definitely lessened my incentive to go like right away, because I was worried that it would get spoiled for me, and then they spoiled it themselves. And then it wound up being that, my fiance and I wanted to go see a movie, and we were like, well, nothing else is really out, so let's go. And I'm glad I did. It was very fun. I am a fan of The Rock, both the wrestler and the entertainer, I guess, in the more movie sense. So and like Chris has said, this was more serious Rock, not your kind of usual, fun Rock, cracking jokes and smiling, but definitely still the essence of, what The Rock brings to the table as a presence, as that this natural charisma that's undeniable. So I like that. For me, I am somewhat fairly familiar with Black Adam from the comics and the JSA and everything, and he's been in the Justice League in recent years, so I have some familiarity there, and not to the extent that it necessarily like affected my enjoyment of the movie, because there are some things where they definitely maybe took some liberties, but I never had a problem with that so much. And ironically, like Chris had said, he enjoyed maybe some of the non-Black Adam things more. I think for me, the strength of the movie was the fact it's a Rock movie, and then there are DC elements as well, and I did enjoy parts of them. Some of it didn't quite sit right with me, and we can get into some of that stuff. But overall, I definitely enjoyed it. It's fun for what it was. I think it's exactly what it needed to be and what it was trying to be. And if you kind of approach it like this is just a fun time, it's not, if you don't take it too seriously, I guess. I think it's very easy to watch this one, just have a good time doing that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way of putting it too, especially since there's been so many other installments in the DCU, DCEU, whatever they want to call it. I know it was the DCEU, but I think they came out recently and said it was just the DCU. I'm not exactly sure, but regardless, I thought this was, I guess it was one of the better ones. We don't have to sit here and compare and put it in a list as far as where it ranks among the other installments in the last 5 to 6 years. But I thought it was good, like you said, Colin. It was, for what it was, enjoyable. I thought The Rock did well. Some of the other elements of the movie that did not involve Black Adam himself were even better than the character itself. But, I thought it was good. And his big selling point, I think, coming into this film was the fact that, I think the tagline of the movie for The Rock was that it was going to change the hierarchy of the DCU. Now, I assume, you mentioned, Colin, as far as the Henry Cavill thing, he pretty much spoiled it in the interviews going in, that he was going to be back in the post-credit scene, and that probably enticed a lot of people to go see it. And it did very well at the box office and whatnot. Did this movie live up to that hype as far as it being this, maybe not the best, but one of the bigger DC movies in recent memory, or was it kind of, like Chris had mentioned, overhyped in that sense?
I think in a vacuum, like if you look at this movie, if you ignore all the press and the publicity, if someone kind of out of the blue sat down and watched it, I would say it does live up to that to an extent. It introduces this new character that is clearly very, very powerful, on par with any number of other heroes that have already been introduced, and that's clearly, in theory, going to be a force to be reckoned with in the new DC universe. And then you get to the post-credit scene, and again, if you hadn't necessarily had that spoiled for you, or if someone managed to avoid all the spoilers somehow, I would say it does change the status quo in a literal sense, in the sense of like if someone didn't know, or again, if they didn't hear that Superman was coming back, or at least it was heavily implied, someone just kind of coming in and seeing that, then yeah, I would say that definitely does change the status quo, because Henry Cavill, Superman, over the years, there's been a number of like, will they, won't they, kind of replace them or do something else, go off in a different direction, and now that he's clearly back and they're moving forward with that, I guess not to contradict myself. Maybe that's ironic is like that. It's I don't know if that's changing the status quo because that's what already was, but the fact they're moving back in that direction, whereas it seemed like they're going to go a different way, in a convoluted, roundabout way. Maybe that does change the status quo for that very reason. So I think it does, while also maybe the movie probably may have been guilty of what any number of other movies are, where it makes itself out to be this game changer that changes everything. I don't know if it changes everything, but it definitely does change some things and sets up some interesting stuff for the DCU, both for Black Adam specifically, bringing back Superman as well, and even beyond other things in the movie as well. So I think it does check that box.
Yeah. I mean, it ties back to several things. Obviously, he was the big cameo in this movie, but you had a few other familiar faces in there, too. You had Amelia Harcourt from the Peacemaker show, and obviously she was in Suicide Squad as well, the more recent one. Was not expecting her. I thought seeing her very briefly was cool. Obviously, Viola Davis back as Amanda Waller for the role that she played was a cool surprise. Maybe that was already in the previews. I didn't see many previews for the movie going in. I just kind of watched the movie. I thought seeing her was cool because she's been in a bunch of stuff in the last, again, 5-6 years. And then randomly, I mean, not even a character thing, but just seeing Henry Winkler as his, who was he? He played the character of the uncle, or Chris.
He was the original Atom Smasher.
Okay, that's who it was. I was thinking, like, obviously he didn't play like the original Atom Smasher in another adaptation. That was just a random cameo from Henry?
Yeah. He's never been in anything as Atom Smasher.
I wasn't sure.
What's funny is that's the character Edge played on the Flash TV show.
Really?
Yeah.
Edge was in Flash?
Yeah, like 1 or 2 episodes he played Atom Smasher, I believe, yeah.
When was that? Recently?
Oh, God, this was probably back in season 2 of The Flash? This was years ago.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's crazy.
Well before Edge was even, like, on the radar for a potential return to the ring.
Wow. That's nuts. So, okay, we're going back a couple of years with that. I didn't even know that he was in that show. That's wild.
He was a very minor character. And,
yeah.
And it was a villainous role, too. Like, Atom Smasher is one of those characters that I think started out as a villain, maybe. I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah, no, I thought seeing him was cool. That was very random. Wasn't expecting that. And you also had the guy that plays Rock in Young Rock, the adult version of Rock, as himself in this movie too, which was I was not expecting that. That was really funny. As someone who watches Young Rock, I thought that was great. Getting that guy a gig in the movie. So no, it was cool. And then you had the other, obviously, the members of you had Dr. Fate, you had a bunch of people, like you said, Atom Smasher and everyone else. How did that cast of characters kind of round out for you, Chris? And if anyone really stood out to you at all?
Well, I watched a show called Leverage, which featured Aldous Hodge. And so I've been a fan of his for years. So I was really happy when he was put in this movie. I thought he did a great job. I loved Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. I thought that was great casting.
Yeah, he was really good, yeah.
Yeah, he did a great job playing the complexity that character kind of requires. Granted, I wish we would have gotten more, and they can always do a prequel, I guess, but I like that this movie establishes that the Justice Society has been a thing for a while. And it sort of opens up the door for them to be like, just because we weren't talking about this wider world of heroes in the previous movies doesn't mean it wasn't out there. Like, clearly Waller has been associated with them for a long time. Like, they're talking about how members of the team have come and gone already. Like, this is not a new thing. So I just thought it was so funny that they basically did the X-Men thing where they're like, we have a jet buried under this massive mansion. It almost looked like the X-Jet too. Like, I don't know.
Too.
Yeah, like, I don't know if Hawkman has a jet in the comics. I don't know enough about him to know any of that. I don't think he does, though, because he flies. So that was just hilarious to me. Like, the way it opened, at least it wasn't under a basketball court. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, there were some elements in the movie that I know a lot of it was probably true to the comics, and you can correct me if I'm wrong if not, but like, I mentioned this to someone after I saw it, but I think it was Atom Smasher. The mask that he was wearing looked like a fucking Deadpool mask. Now, I know, again, it was probably a comic thing, but just if you're watching this as a general audience member, people would probably think that was Deadpool. I mean, he looked literally exactly like him with the mask that he was wearing. Was that just me, or did you guys feel the same way?
I mean, the mask was blue, right?
Oh, I know it was a different color, but I mean, it looked like the exact same mask, yeah.
I mean, I think his costume was about as comics accurate as it gets, I believe.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was just similar in the comics or whatever. I mean, that was something that was probably they just had to do, and it didn't take away from the movie at all.
There's a lot of characters in the comics that just have a mask with some eyes, like Zemo.
Zemo too. Yeah, true.
So, yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, but that character, to me, I don't know. Like, the thing with him and Cyclone, or whatever her name was.
Yeah.
Like, that was very tacked on for me.
Mm-hmm.
That none of that felt really necessary or interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care if those two characters get together.
Well, to me, like, if you're gonna do that in a movie, if you're gonna have these two characters, if you're gonna spend time cultivating this relationship, I'd rather they have some sort of resolution. They actually do get together, not to be cheesy and say like they kissed or something, but like some sort of, I don't know, some happy ending, progress, whatever. I don't know, whatever it might be. Whereas with this, like they clearly were going in that direction. They're establishing it. They all but did kind of like come out and say, yeah, like we're a thing. But then like by the end of the movie, they didn't really. So
yeah,
it struck me as it's very tacked on and unnecessary because what they did do, like the way they did cultivate it and try and like doll it up, it didn't exactly draw me in and interest me. And maybe that's because to me it was so subtle yet tacked on that like it kind of didn't do either direction the right way, I guess, for my liking.
Now, that said, I thought the visual portrayal of Cyclone's powers was one of the coolest parts of the movie.
Yeah, I thought it came across really well. I mean, yeah, to tack on what you guys just said as far as the tacked on romance between the two characters, yeah, it just felt unnecessary. Do you guys think they had done that to appeal to a certain demographic or whatever? I mean, that was just, I don't know. It felt like it wasn't something that was originally planned. But I do agree, though, as far as the powers go, they came across really well. The special effects in this movie look great overall.
I mean, if the plan is to use any of these characters in more movies going forward, then sure, they began their story, and maybe we'll see it play out in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? With James Gunn and this other guy, Peter Safran, I think his name is,
mm-hmm.
They're basically like co-leading DC Studios now. They're kind of like sharing the Kevin Feige role at Marvel. So I know their plan is to really start making things feel interconnected again. And even though they have these separate projects like Joker 2 and the Batman 2 and the Penguin TV show and all that, like, they are going to start building out the DCU again. And I have a feeling that means we could see Affleck come back to do a movie where he maybe hands off the mantle to some of the younger Bat Family characters.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. For right now, I'm not a Snyderverse fan, as you know, but I actually think Henry Cavill is a good Superman. So I'm happy he's back. And seeing him in this movie did make me happy.
Yeah, the whole scene was great. I thought it was a great way to close it out. And, I mean, listen, he wanted to create buzz for the movie, and he did just that by kind of announcing it in advance that it was going to happen. So I thought that was cool. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the James Gunn thing right now, right there. Let's talk about that as far as, does that give you more optimism, Chris? I mean, does that make you look forward to the DC movies going forward, as you mentioned, as far as them kind of doing that more inner building and stuff? Not to say they haven't done that at all. I mean, they have. It just wasn't very good. Do you think, does that make you more excited for the upcoming installments in the DCU, or not so much, and it's more of a wait-and-see approach?
No, I'm excited because I feel like the people who were in charge of it before were just studio executives, like Walter Hamada. Like, he's a lifetime executive. James Gunn is a creative. His roles have always been writer, producer, director. So he's going to put that level of care and detail into the whole thing that he does into his individual movies. But not every movie is going to be directed by James Gunn. They're not all going to feel like a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which I know a lot of DC fans are like, oh, that's why Suicide Squad sucked. It just felt like Guardians, like, whatever. But it makes me excited because it means we're going to have somebody who genuinely cares about the source material. Like, that's why Kevin Feige is so great. He loves Marvel. Like, he legitimately is a huge super fan of all this shit. Yeah. So having in person, like, this is a good hire by DC. I don't know much about this Peter Safran guy, but having James Gunn there, to me, ensures that we're going to get creative stories. We're going to get characters we might not have ever expected to see actually showing up. And maybe they'll actually be able to build this back into something that will go on for a while, because there was a little while there where it was like, okay, they're giving up on the DC universe and kind of moving into like solo movies again.
Yeah, I mean, James Gunn's got a winning record, you mentioned. I mean, between, Guardians and everything he's done in Marvel, and then, I guess, Suicide Squad, depending on who you talk to. I mean, I know we reviewed it last year, I think with Bill, actually, and we all loved it. I loved the movie. I got to go back and watch it back again. I mean, some people, like you said, some of the DC fans may not like it as much, but, a majority of his projects, if not all of them, have been very well received, and I think having him as the head of creative, so to speak, of DC is definitely encouraging. I would agree. Would you share those same sentiments, Colin, as far as James now being in charge of the DC going forward, Colin?
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I think this is one of the more significant things kind of coming out of this movie. I don't remember the exact timeline. I think like Black Adam came out, and not long after that's when the news about James Gunn and Safran came out. So I guess like heading into the Black Adam, ironically, there wasn't that hope for progress and direction with the greater DCU. So I very much approached it like, okay, this is Black Adam, this is The Rock's movie. If it leads to anything connected, great, but if, like, there wasn't that real hope for something more. And then the James Gunn thing and Safran came out. And for me, I mean, I remember I was a kid and I loved Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, like some of my all-time favorite movies, but those are so standalone. They did not connect to anything. And over the years, I've become such a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where literally everything's connected. I really do like that style of just like the world building and really everything kind of overlaps to some degree or connects to some degree. And DC, like, they tried to do it, and like you had said, Graham, it did not go well. And the frustrating part of being a DC fan or comic book fan in general is that, like, we've seen this happen. We had Man of Steel, we had Suicide Squad. Like, they did it in such a way that you kind of knew it wasn't going to work, and then it didn't work. And now here we are. And Man of Steel came out 10 years ago, almost 9 years ago. Like, it's been a long time, and now like we're almost back at ground zero in some ways. Not to say that like they haven't made any progress, or to throw away what they have done. Some of it's been good. I was a huge fan of Peacemaker. I enjoyed Suicide Squad as well, but there's always that kind of undertone of like a lack of faith in the general direction, because again, we've seen it not go well so far, while some projects have been successful. So Black Adam could be this kind of a strong first step for whatever this new direction is. I've been seeing, I think it was a James Gunn interview or some article out there that said that Gunn and Safran are plotting like a 10-year story for the DCU, which is essentially what maybe it's at least a fair comparison to what Marvel has done. This is this very much overarching story that everything's kind of going in a certain direction. Things are connected again. And like I said, that's what I really kind of tend to enjoy more. So I'm very hopeful and excited, and having Black Adam kind of at this point as an unofficial beginning or introduction to that, I think it's a strong first step, and I'm excited to see what could be coming next.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great way to kind of kick off this new era, so to speak, of the DC. And just kind of thinking about it now, I saw Batman. We talked about that back earlier this year. The Peacemaker show is this year too. Was there anything else that DC did on a major level as far as shows or movies that came out this year, or was it just this, Batman, and Peacemaker? Because I can't remember anything else, unless I just didn't see it.
I mean, the Batman was like, technically, I think that was on New Year's Eve day, right?
Was it? I thought it came out in February.
That might have been when it came out on HBO Max.
Maybe, yeah.
To stay? No, that's right. The Batman was the final movie to be released directly to HBO Max, and it did come out like right at the end of the year.
Oh, wow, okay.
I thought it came out in March, and then it was on HBO Max later this year.
Well, what they do is, when they were doing that, they would put it on for 2 weeks and then take it off for a couple months.
Oh, okay.
They did that throughout all of 2021 because of their pandemic release schedule, like how they decided to set that up. And then I think like February or March was when it returned to be on there permanently.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
But yeah, that was like the last movie under that whole thing, I think.
Wow.
Or wait, maybe I'm getting that confused with Mortal Kombat.
It might have been Mortal Kombat.
I don't know, man. The last year's
either
been
way.
weird. It's been a while, but like, yeah, I think it was pretty much the Batman, Peacemaker, and this, right? I don't think there was anything else.
I don't think so, which is crazy because there's so many Marvel things. I mean, we've only had 3 Marvel movies, I think, this year, to be fair.
There's all the shit on the CW, obviously, but I stopped paying attention to that years ago.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. At least of the 3 things they did do between the Batman movie, this, and Peacemaker were all great. I thoroughly enjoyed them all. You mentioned earlier, Chris, as far as like you mentioned them doing the side stuff, and I know Colin, you referenced this as well. Will they have like 2 different Batmans and stuff like that at the same time? Like, so if they do another Batman movie, which I think was confirmed, the one that came out earlier this year with Robert Pattinson, will they just have 2, like, not in the same universe, obviously, but just 2 concurrent Batman universes going on? Is that like confusing for people, or is that the idea?
I mean, they've been doing something like that in the comics for years. Like, there's different Batman books running all the time. So I wouldn't be surprised if the whole, like, Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson Batman universe continues to build out, because they had plans for, like, several characters from that movie to do other things, TV shows and other movies.
You mentioned
and
the Penguin one, yeah.
But James Gunn, for all we know, might either torpedo that or try and find some multiverse way to bring the Pattinson Batman into the mainline DCU. Who knows at this point?
Yeah, no, I'm curious. What do they even have next after this? This came out a couple of weeks ago. Is there another DC movie set to come out, like, soon? I know the Joker 2.
Shazam 2.
Oh, yeah. Shazam 2.
That's been done filming for a while, I think.
Yeah, that was supposed to come out in, like, around Christmas, but then it got bumped to, like, April or March or something, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Which is going to be awkward if they based the movie around being at Christmas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because wasn't the last one during the holidays?
I think it was, yeah. And that one wasn't...
I just remember there was snow on the ground.
That one also didn't come out on Christmas, too, because I remember I saw that one in the month of April, so that didn't come out on Christmas either. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So
weird.
Yeah, DC's not good with their timeline shit, but I don't know. I'm looking forward to that. Do you guys have any expectations as far as when we might get Black Adam versus Shazam? Is it going to be like one of those Godzilla versus King Kong things where we get a couple of independent movies before we get the big crossover? It sounds like it might not be anytime soon. Colin, I'll start with you.
I think when The Rock was giving Superman's Return away for free, I think he was asked, like, hypothetically, because I was already, people were either speculating about it or maybe gotten, I think it was weird, because, like, he had so many interviews, like, he already, like, kind of spoiled it, and then people started asking him about it, with, like, kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, well, we don't know what's happening. So if I remember, like, he said something like, that's a ways away, and I don't think he mentioned, like, a specific kind of roadmap to get there. I remember feeling like the implication was that it would be, a couple movies between now and then, is that I don't think it'd be wise to go right from Black Adam to that showdown. I think I don't know if the answer is having the Superman movie first, because that's very much in the early stages now. But it does feel like it's a long way away. know if that means we get a Black Adam 2 and then that. I don't know what this specifically, what the plan is there, but I do think we're going to be waiting for that for a while. And just to loop back to what we were talking about earlier, that's been the frustrating thing about like being a DC fan, wanting these movies, like as Chris said at the beginning of the show, like there's no urgency as a fan because they're coming out twice, 3 times a year. Yeah. But then like when you have something like this, Superman Returns, everyone's excited, then you're left waiting for maybe 5 years. Like I don't even know. I don't know what the timeline is. And then by then it's like it's both, maybe there's more build up, so there's more excitement, but then it's like, wow, that was 5 years ago, and we've been waiting, and like, I don't know, to me, maybe there's something to the, striking when the iron's hot, but I think we're going to be waiting for a while, for better or worse.
Yeah, it builds up anticipation, but as someone who wants to see it as the same as you guys, it's going to be a while, and it is a bit frustrating. But, less is more sometimes, so we'll see how it pans out. But what about you, Chris? What do you fall as far as where you think that might happen between Shazam and Black Adam? Do we get a Black Adam appearance not in Shazam 2, but it's coming out in a couple months. It would have been out by next month. I doubt they had done that. But when do you think we're going to get it, and how long are you willing to wait until we get it?
I think because when The Rock was saying, like, oh, let's build them separately, he was talking about Black Adam's movie in particular. I don't rule out a post-credit scene or cameo in Shazam.
Okay.
But in terms of, like, an all-out battle, it doesn't ever feel like The Rock's character is going to go full villain, so it'll always be one of those superhero battles that ends with them teaming up to fight somebody else anyway. So I really don't care too much when they do it. It's just, it'll be a little disappointing if it never happens.
Yeah, no, I would hope it is a priority for The Rock in some sense, because just hearing him talk about it in interviews and stuff, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like he wants to make Black Adam its own hero franchise thing, and it's like, yeah, we'll get to the Shazam stuff eventually. It's like, well, it's kind of the whole point of the fucking character, so hopefully at some point we do get that, and it's not, too far down the road. But I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. This has been great, guys. I look forward to hopefully doing another DC review at some point down the road. It might be another 6 months to a year. I would assume Shazam is going to be the next one, and assumingly it comes out in April, so we don't have to wait that long. It's probably in 3 or 4 months from now. But Chris, great time as always. Thanks for coming on, man. You're on the Twitter machine at BR_Doctor. Colin, you're on Twitter at CT_2110. Colin, one more time, where can the people find you? You mentioned Fightful, WrestleZone, all that other great stuff.
Yeah, Fightful, WrestleZone, and coming soon, which is WrestleZone's like sister site, which covers entertainment movies and stuff. I focus mostly on DC and Marvel stuff there, so those are my primary things, at least right now. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Perfect. Next time we do one of these dudes, I'll be sure to let you know. But thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Absolutely a pleasure to join you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. I'll talk to you in the next one.
Thanks.